Wow. Welcome to Carlie's couch, I guess.
This is Lex. This is Carlie. We're looking like that Diddy gif right now.
Right. I was like, who's going to start the podcast? I guess I was today. Happy Monday. Welcome to the couch. We are so glad you're here with us today, and we have another great topic to discuss.
As always. So what are we talking about today, Lex?
We are going to talk about.
That's at North Carolina.
Opening your mouth to speak. We're going to talk about making an impact. So I feel like a lot of people say like they want to change the world, or, you know, they have some kind of mission that they want to do to give back. But today we're going to talk about what it really means to make an impact, what ways you can make an impact, and, you know, if that is something that you really should be intentional about.
Mm-hmm. I mean, there's just been a lot going on in the world. And I mean, as I feel like for me, as I get older, I start thinking about that like a legacy or an impact or something that I want to leave and how I want to help shape the world. So I think it's very like time appropriate, but also something that I think is always in the back of my mind, like in everything that I'm doing.
Mm-hmm. So what does it mean to you to make an impact?
For me, making an impact is being able to create change or to build things to help people. Like impacting other people's lives, like in a very literal sense, like being able to either make someone's day easier or invest in something that helps them have access to different programs or something that they wouldn't have had before, or helps inspire them, or help them be able to learn things or challenges them. Like there's a lot of different ways, but I think it's through everything that I do, it's looking at what like tangible. Well, I guess they're not even all tangible, so I can't even say tangible. What impact in the literal sense, if that made any sense, that I can help people.
Yeah,
make.
some of what you're saying sounds like our previous episode when we were talking about, what's the word that starts with the E?
Oh.
No. When we were talking about how do you empower?
Oh, yeah,
like how do you really
people.
empower people by giving them actual tools and resources? But do you think they're the same thing? I don't think it's interchangeable.
No, I was about to say, no, I don't think that they're interchangeable, but now that I like put them side by side, I'm like, I don't know if I could give you the exact definition of them, because that is very much what I was talking about. It's very much empowerment.
Yeah, what you just said was more on the empowerment. But I agree with that, but I also think that there are levels to impact. I think sometimes saying good morning to somebody and you never know what they were going through might have left an impact. Or if you think about ways that somebody may have impacted you or a situation may have impacted you, I think that it doesn't have to just be that I was given something, or it doesn't have to be super directly tied to some result, but sometimes it can be that I saw somebody give somebody else something, or it can be, just something that sparks an idea or a thought in me, or somebody that I don't know, like giving me a hug or something like that, and me thinking like, dang, that was kind of weird, but it did make me think, okay, you know, you need to be kind to people, or et cetera. So I think that on different levels, there's impacting people by smiling at them, or by saying something to them, or by people watching our podcast, perhaps, or things like that. Not just, oh, I gave you something, or I did something for you, or gave you an opportunity, which is all incredible and great things as well.
Yeah, but impact. Yeah, and now that I like think about it, just like being kind, or seeing people, like you said, doing things, or even things that happen in society, like those have impacts on us.
And I think impact also has to do with kind of like reputation, because you mentioned legacy, but also, you know, I feel like people who are impactful, or people that we speak about as having had an impact, there's a certain air about them, and there's a certain way that they carry themselves, interact with people. And it's almost like an overall kind of way to live if you are living with some type of purpose and want to give impact back. So I know towards the end of the episode, I had 9 behavior traits that I wanted to go over that are for people who are impactful, so we can see kind of where we stand there. But specifically for you, what type of impact do you say you want to leave?
Well, now that you're framing it, I was about to say, I kind of want to like sit on that for a second, because I was thinking about like empowerment.
But if that's impact, then that's still impact.
Yeah, but in the way that you framed it, it's a little bit different. And so like, I want to like, it's interesting. Yeah, that puts me on the spot, because they're different, but then they're the same thing, but they're different. Like for me, impact, like I always want to be kind. I always want to lead by example and inspire, or in what I'm doing, like empower and inspire people to be the best versions of themselves. Like, I don't know, it's weird. It's like a way of living. like my way of living, like I feel like I want that to impact people to be their best selves, or to be inspired, or to feel loved, or to be kinder, or to like work in their purpose, and to be like their best self.
Okay. So I'll talk about the type of impact I want to have if it jogs anything, or if you have any other thoughts as well.
That's why I wanted you to go first, because I'm out here struggling.
Well, because I don't have any planned response either, but to think about it, the impact that I want to have on people is I want people to come away from experiences with me feeling like they don't have any excuses to do what they want to do. I want people to come away with a desire to learn, research, figure out. I like when I talk to people and they get curious. So kind of opening them up to wanting to make moves, or look into something, or think, yeah, I can do this, or maybe I should do this, or what do I want to do about or with this? So I kind of like that, like kind of sparking the ideation, the ideas with people, what they can do, what they want to do. But I also want to have an impact on my community in ways that I want to see people have successful businesses or be entrepreneurs and not just freelancers. That's what I'm trying to do with myself. So on the same wave, as I partner with more other people, or continue to speak to other people and work on different projects, they're also kind of pulling in that same thing too. Where it's like, all right, we need to level up and like take this to a different plane. To be more successful, or to have more impact on others who are then watching, viewing, hearing, whatever it is we're doing. And so a lot of my work has to do with visual stuff, or strategy, or community building. And so a lot of people can see that, like you're building a community and people see it. So then they can take from that whatever it is like that we're putting out.
Mm-hmm. No, I love that. And the word spark is actually one of my favorite words, like being a catalyst for something. And it always, like, quote master, always comes to mind as like Tupac's quote, like, I might not change the world, but I'll spark the mind of the person who will. And also with Nipsey, like the same thing. Like he was like, I'm the Tupac of my generation. So for me, that looked like he was one of those minds that Tupac might have sparked to do all the things like the hustlenomics and everything that he's doing.
Yeah, but what do you have to do to spark that? So I feel like to have an impact, you have to be doing these things for yourself. You have to be that person that you're trying to spark, I guess, with other people. And I think that's where, as always, the conversation goes towards, well, making sure that you're doing those things for yourself, working on yourself, et cetera, because I feel like that's what people see anyway, and that people are more impacted by how they see you living your life. And so a lot of times the people who get too preachy, or, they're focused so much on everything's kind of about them and they're trying to put this message out, it then almost becomes inauthentic because, well, we see what you're doing in your life and maybe it doesn't correlate quite the same. And so I think that it's important really like to say what I want to impact means, all right, that should be what you're doing, or I should see that in you. So maybe to answer what kind of impact you want to have, well, maybe that answers what you do have now, maybe not what you want to have, but it's looking at, well, what are you doing?
Yeah, and looking at your fruits, like the seeds that you're planting, the things that you're watering in your life. That's why it's really hard to trust people. Like if we won't have a financial advisor who's in bankruptcy and has no money and doesn't know how to handle their ends. And so it's like looking at those type of things. And so when I think about that, like I love that, like you have to do it first. And I think you make the biggest impact by living by example and through the actions that you're taking, not just the words that you're saying. And a lot of times impact doesn't even have to have words. Right.
And so if you're saying you want to build your community, what things are you doing, or where are you volunteering, or where are you helping your neighbor out, or where are you, doing whatever it is. But, you doing that is the way you start bringing other people onto that. So with the way you want to impact, when did that kind of click for you? Or I guess it's still clicking, huh?
I was about to say, yeah, well, it's still clicking, but it's always been there. Like I've always wanted to empower, but also impact my community. And I realized, I think at a younger age, because I was always like a leader in leadership positions, that like when you lead by example, like people do follow, and that becomes like who you are to them. Like I didn't have to tell people things about myself, like they just kind of knew them. And I never like directly like put that together into impact. But I also know that a lot of people made a big impact in my life, whether it be teachers or coaches, just in things that they said or the space that they held or how they carried themselves that really impacted me. And I was always like, man, like I want to be able to be that person for somebody else.
Can you think of any specific examples that you remember of something somebody's done or that you saw that impacted you?
For sure. One of my track coaches, my family didn't have a car when I was in high school. And so every single track practice, my coach took me home, would pick me up for meets, would make sure I had snacks, like took care of me. And now that I'm older, I'm like, oh, Lord, you were raising a whole other child.
Yeah.
But because she did that, because she always made sure I was okay and like created that safe space, I was able to like kind of relax and have less stress about doing the things that I was doing. And I'm like, man, like that really inspired me to help other people too. Like in her and then one of my fifth grade teacher, Miss Hudson. I don't even know where she is. And I checked. She didn't have a Facebook last time I checked. But she always spoke life into us. And so she gave us nicknames. And in fifth grade, my nickname was Can Do. And I was kind of upset because I was like, I didn't get like a cutesy nickname. It's Can Do. And I was like, well, why? I was kind of upset and I asked her about it. And she was like, because you already know the answer. You just have to learn how to trust yourself and be confident. And every time she was like, you can do this. And just her saying that, I was like, man, maybe I can. And
that's cool that you remember that.
Impact. Huge. Oh, she was awesome.
I think sometimes too, it's not what other people have done, but also it can be what you've experienced. So for me, well, part of it is what somebody else has done too. But for me, like times when like I lived in my car or like before I moved to LA or like having experienced some like crazy lows, I feel like now if I see anybody who ever needed anything, like it's like not even a question, like why wouldn't I? Because people who have been there for me when I needed something or, you know, even if I didn't really express it like that, like people have always been there for me. Or my example might be my friend Will Medley. Like when I first moved to LA, he let me crash at his spot because his roommate's a comedian and he was always gone. So they said, oh, I could stay in there. And you know, I stayed there for a few months and I'm like, man, like I had to really come here and figure out, well, where am I going to go? What am I going to do? And so now when I have people who are in town or like, you know, my cousin, one of my cousins hit me up the other day, like, hey, you know, my living situation's kind of funny. Can I come over? And it's like, of course, like no question. Like you can stay in my room if need be or whatever, but like I'll never push anybody away, especially when so many people have helped me. So to me, it's so crazy when I think about people who really don't have an inclination to help others or to not be generous. Like I'm toot my own horn, but like I'm so generous and I don't be having nothing. Like I'm be so generous. But as soon as I did, I might have just got a check. But then it's easy to like, you know, when you see somebody like give them some money or do whatever you need to do for people because like that just makes sense to me.
Yeah. And I don't get it either. Like, I don't understand how you couldn't help somebody. And I don't know if that's like you said, experiences kind of impacting us and shaping who we are. But like, we ain't ever have it, but like, we always gave it away. Like from a very young age, like looking at like my grandfather and the way that my mom is like super giving. And it just always inspired me to help other people in the same way and not like run and try to like save people. But like, if they need it, like I got you. And that's changed my life.
And also friends of mine who are working toward projects, like to hear them talk about their passion and what they're trying to do, that leaves an impact on me, like seeing other people who want to do the same types of things. And so that makes me want to step it up. Like, well, where can I specifically like put my energy? Because I feel like that's one thing I haven't super done. But for me, it was maybe a few years ago that I kind of realized how I wanted to make an impact or what I wanted to focus on when, you know, I thought to create the Success Squad. And like, all right, I know, like I still know it's not, I'm changing it almost again, but like I still know there's some need to have this almost like a mastermind or like a group or a place where people can talk about certain things. And I always have people ask me about certain questions or ask me certain things or looking to me for, you know, for certain types of, as a certain type of resource to them. And so I'm like, all right, I know there's a need for this. And now it's kind of like figuring out how that's going to work. And so I also think that it's not something necessarily to rush. Because still, like in our lives, like since then, we've started this podcast and I've been on another podcast and have done other work as well that's kind of in the same vein. And so you're still always working within that capacity and you kind of see, you know, as we've spoken about before, how things can line up and come together or you meet somebody or whatever happens where it allows you to, oh, this is what I need to do. And now kind of getting more specific and working towards something with more detail.
No, and I love that. And so it's not even actions that can impact you. It's also like you see something missing, like with the need for like a mastermind in this group and these questions that these people have. Like there's not this big all-inclusive resource out there for people or for people in this certain field. And so finding, what your strengths and talents are and like what you're good at, and then seeing how you can help change that part of the game.
And this is something I have on the list for later too, but that also goes into using your influence for good, because people only ask me all these questions because I've just grown an audience over time that has cultivated in that way. And so, there are people who may be super duper smart and they might not have a huge online presence or, but in real life, they're doing a lot too. And for a lot of people who do end up having a big online presence because they're funny, smart, look good, whatever it is, it really does become an opportunity for you to, create your own narrative of like, what am I here to give? Or like, how can I give value to these people? Not that you owe them anything, but why not use that for good and to be impactful? Like we've heard so many times about people, or I've had like lots of messages about people who, they did this thing because of something I said or something we talked about, or, the person who's like, oh, I was about to end my life and I started listening to the podcast. Like there's so many people who will reach out and you don't even realize they're listening to you.
Man, that's what I was about to say. So I have two like examples. One of them was somebody, Lex and I were somewhere, y'all. People just be knowing her. And some dude had remembered that she used to write down her list of goals and like, or actions or whatever the thing, your list every, and he was like, man, I started doing that because of you. And it's like, she wasn't doing that so he would do this or so people would start following her. She was just chronicling like her life, like sharing that part of her journey. And in my head, I'm like, probably to hold you accountable or probably just to keep you in line. And it inspired other people. And then I had one of my homegirls, shout out to Brashay. She was listening to the podcast and like sent me one text and was like, yo, like I love the podcast. You and Lex are on it. Asked me a couple questions. Next week, she has started a podcast. It's called Mama Bear Podcast for Black women and women of color who have kids, talking about the real of being a mom. But also then she was like, and I started a business all because I started listening to you guys. And I'm like,
to her.
Yeah, she does virtual assistant. So the
I
tasks
shared
take
that
over
on Twitter too before. And then I was looking at her like, hold up, we might need your assistance ourselves.
Heck yeah, hold on. Yeah, don't take all her bandwidth.
Right. But yeah, like you never know like who's listening and who's paying attention, who's watching. Like somebody's always watching. And like I said earlier, like I've seen people interact and that's had an impact on me. Or I can see on the news or, what somebody may have done at like an early age. And like, it's like, wow, like there's no excuses to not be out here doing what you can do yourself, regardless of what team you have or whatever. But I think that every day for me, how I'm working towards like being impactful and looking to have an impact on a daily that goes to me not letting myself down with what I need to get done daily. It's not necessarily about trying to show everything. Sometimes I feel like being more active and showing stuff, and sometimes I like don't feel like saying anything. I don't feel like tweeting or posting anything. And so it's not for that. When I do that stuff, I make sure that it's all for me. And then the conversations that come from it, I see and I'll engage. But I think it's just a day by day thing. It's one day at a time.
It is. And I think it kind of has to be. It's so easy to get, for me at least, to get bogged down by like when I look at like the big picture and all of the things that I want to do. Like it's all amazing, but it's a whole lot. And so by taking that time like for myself to check in and make sure like the jobs that I'm taking and the companies that I'm working with are things that I believe in or things in that same field, or if I'm trying to, like, I work with kids a lot because I care about kids and about helping them get access to things that we didn't have. And so I volunteer. And, like, I try to do those things and be hands-on, even if it's just, like, okay, so I have to take a job because I got to pay my bills that might not necessarily be in alignment. But, I volunteer to kind of balance it out and remind me of why I'm doing the things that I'm doing and why I'm sacrificing
and
sometimes.
You have to be stable as well. And we've spoken about that before. You don't have to be barefoot out here in rags to help people. Like you need to make sure you can pay your own bills, pay your rent, take care of yourself in order to have an impact on others. That's why we keep saying and keep stressing how important it is to take care of yourself. You can't help the poor if you're one of them. Shout out Sean Carter. Like that's just not how it works.
Yeah.
So basically I think that you do what you can do, but there's still ways, like you smile, you watch your attitude, stuff like that. But you do it from a place where it's not you necessarily struggling to help other people. Do you feel like you can measure impact, or how can you measure your impact?
I'm not sure. And I think I think you can measure it. And there right now, like when I was in business school, they were working on like key performance indicators and ways to see like which nonprofits are actually making a difference and which things are actually bringing impact to the communities. But I just think it's interesting in thinking about if it is measurable and if it's something that you can even keep track of.
Or even if it's something you should measure.
Yeah.
I think you should measure impact if we're talking about like a nonprofit. If we're talking about something where we're taking funds or using funds or fundraising, I think you do owe to show, hey, this is where money is going. This is what you're doing. What you just said also reminded me of a friend of mine who is in D.C. She runs Starting With Today. That's the name of a nonprofit. And I had a call with her the other day. Finally, we've been trying to catch up forever, but I'm trash with that. But we were FaceTiming and she was talking about, well, I want to be more of a thought leader in my space. And I was like, well, like, what is it that's different about you? And her thing was, well, as a nonprofit, we're doing things so differently to be more effective. Like, people aren't really wanting to donate to Red Cross and some of these other places where it's like, I don't even know what's happening with this money. Like, people not seeing it from hurricanes and everything else. And so she talked about, that's really her focus is like, how can you can be a more effective nonprofit on a smaller scale and like how you do that. And I was like, oh, well, that's really cool. So like those are the types of things that you can speak about and help other people do and realize. So it's important also for you to, I guess, keep track and like talk to other people. Like sometimes you get ideas sparked about ways that you can do things. And sometimes we don't even realize the impact we have until somebody else is like, oh, shoot, that's pretty cool. So I think it's good like that you talk to each other too. But in measuring it, I don't know if you necessarily have to, but I think when it feels good, like what you're doing, when you're in a good space and when people around you respect you, like, when people aren't cool with you or like, they like what you're doing or not. So I think that's just about keeping your eyes open and being aware, like self-aware and being aware of like how people view you and your reputation as well.
Yeah, and that is just something to keep in the back of your mind, especially if you have like a nonprofit or a social enterprise or a business that is impact focused. Thinking about that, like thinking about ways, because whenever you're looking for funding or investors or whatever you're doing, like that is something that they will ask. And so that's like something I'm struggling through too, which is why I put that on here. So I'm like, I don't have any answers yet, but it's definitely something to think about.
Obstacles can keep me from doing more sometimes, and I think one of the biggest obstacles is the one that I like work through, which is the funding and all of that, right? But at the same time, like we said earlier, there's so many little things that can be done. And sometimes it's just a matter of catching my thoughts. Like if I see something or hear something or whatever, catching like a negative thought and flipping that around, trying to be more conscious of like looking people in the eye or smiling at them and like little things like that. I think that make a difference, and just helping people where you can. Sometimes just sharing somebody's post and like spreading news, things like that, like tweeting something somebody's doing can be helpful for them, or it can be a way that you have impact without like having to spend all your money and stuff. So I think there's no excuse. And I think that if you want to have impact, you should be able to look at your day, look at a week, and be able to see, oh, okay, yeah, these are some of the things that, I am doing regularly, because I think it has to really be authentic and come from an authentic place for that big impact. Like when we're talking about like, oh, I want to buy up the block and I want to, start this community center and do all these things. Like all that stuff is awesome and cool, but you can tell like if you have to be there like mindset wise first. And if you already have that, you're in that mode to help and you're thinking in that certain way, then you're on the way to that.
And I think it's like you said, it always goes back to self, but taking a moment and realizing that making impact is very much about you and your life and where you are right now. So you have to do it in a way that works for you. Like right now, money might not be your thing. And so now you might volunteer hands-on, or you might, like if your friend is you might help them make something or help them go set up for an event or do something behind the scenes or share posts. But maybe in the future, when you don't have as much time, maybe it will be money. And just seeing like what works for you right now. And then I would also say to ask your friends, like if they have businesses or there's nonprofits or there's things that you want to support, but you're not quite sure how, or you don't have the traditional means to support them, then just asking them. Like I had a homeboy who's having an event coming up and I was like, yo, bro, like I don't have the cash to help chip in on that, but let me know what else I can do to support you.
Yeah, and that's important and a great point as well, that a lot of times we don't even really know what our friends do or how we can help. So every once in a while, I think it's good to not just see people's tweets and posts, but to really text them, call them, or set up a time to talk to them and just see what they're really doing. And maybe something clicks. Maybe it doesn't, but I think that we should be more cognizant of having real conversations to understand what's going on. Because lately, the more I've done that, that's why, you know, my friend group has come together to say, well, we can start this and we can be doing this together. And we have another episode about that as well. But it's really a lot of listening. If you don't want to make an impact, is that okay?
Oh man, I'm biased. I think everybody should make an impact in some way. I don't know if you necessarily have to want to or have to have this like driving desire to, but I just can't see why you wouldn't want to in some way. Like it doesn't have to be a grand buy up the block scheme, but being kind, like impacting, like being a good person or helping out those in need, like something I just in my head, I'm like, I don't know how you wouldn't want to help in some way.
A lot of people, their focus, they want to help themselves, and that's their main focus. Sometimes because that's all you know. Maybe you've had your resources, and you're used to being able to just do things, and maybe you don't think about it in that way. But you probably will have an impact, because if you start anything like that, still impacts people. If you start an app, if you do this or that, it impacts people. So I don't think you necessarily have to say, I want to change the world, or say anything specific. But if you live, then you have some kind of impact. And so why not make sure that that's a positive impact?
Yeah, even if you're just focused on you and your family, like you'll have an impact on your kids or your spouse or on your friends. And so why not like leave something of value that feels good for them?
And if you haven't defined that for yourself, or if you're not sure like what that would look like, then again, I think you just look at what you care about and what you like. And that's kind of where it stems from, because that's where your passion is. Whatever sparks you is what people can see. Like people can see that passion from you. And so that's how you can maybe spark whatever in them, whether you like music or art or whatever it is. There's somebody who can see the efforts that you're putting forth and the resources you're using, sharing those or whatever it is, and they can learn, grow, whatever from that. So whatever you do regularly, it's just kind of sometimes opening up a little bit and stop thinking that what you're doing is boring. Stop thinking that what you're doing doesn't matter, because it really does to somebody. And there's somebody else out there who's trying to do the same things as you, trying to run the same race as you, and you guys can be of support to each other.
And it matters to you. At the most base level, like it matters to you. And that's one of my favorite things in the world, is like seeing people talk about what they're excited about and like really what sets their soul on fire. Like their face just lights up and you see them just get so excited. Whatever it is, if it's a video game, jujitsu, like boxing, whatever your thing is, like do that. And I promise you'll be inspiring somebody in a way you don't even know how.
And so like what kind of person does it take to leave an impact? We have a list of some things. And so I think we'll like read each one and then just like quickly say something about it. A behavior quality or behavior trait that somebody who leaves an impact or makes an impact has, one of them is they dedicate themselves to what gives their life meaning or purpose. So that's kind of like what we were just saying. Like if I love working for myself, I love figuring out this whole entrepreneurial journey, that's just what's authentic to me. And so that's what I like to see coming out of others, just even that thought process in other people and then wanting to create and do things. And so it lines up. There's an alignment there with what I love and what I do and how I'm sparking other people.
No, I love that one. They commit to continually bettering themselves. And I think any improvement, even if it's 1% a day that you make in yourself, can impact other people, because they'll see you, whether it's losing weight or if you're learning or reading or doing something, building something, like whatever it is, people are like, man, if they did that, I can do that. Or look at the dedication that she has for doing that every single day, like you writing your goals.
And also just you bettering yourself makes you a better tool to do what you're trying to do. So you should always be opening to wanting to be better. The next one is you engage with people in mutually beneficial ways. So you're not just expecting people to give to you. You're not just out here giving, and letting yourself, be run dry either. Mm-hmm. You are intentionally connecting with people that it makes sense to connect with, where it benefits you both to work together or to help each other or whatever that is. Everything doesn't have to be on your own, and that also impacts each other while together impacting other people. And so being able to have those connections and not being a user type person is definitely a quality of somebody who wants to have an impact.
For sure, a giver's gain.
Mm-hmm.
They invest time and energy into what can be. And so for me, this means like investing time and energy and things that I'm doing into things that are positive and not tearing down like people's ideas or not breaking down like systems and things like that. It's like investing
Even if
into,
it's bad now, it's not what is, it's what it could be.
Yeah, and the possibility of things.
A person who has impact, they're okay with being critiqued, and you can take criticism and you embrace it because, like we said earlier, you want to be a better person. You want to learn. You want to hear from people that you say you want to impact. It's not about you. And so your ego is a big thing to be removed when it comes to people you think about who have been impactful. It shouldn't be about them. And so you're able to receive critique from people who are telling you, oh, well, I don't know about this, whether it's the work you're doing, whether it's you, whatever it is, you should really be able to take that and use that for good.
And I think that's one of the hardest ones is learning to receive that constructive criticism and moving forward with it and taking it in and not being defensive, especially in jobs, even in entrepreneurship.
Yep.
Another quality is they spread what they know. And so it's learning this wisdom and knowledge and the things that we're good at are the things that we're learning and then spreading that out like amongst people, like giving other people access or answering questions like you do all the time on LinkedIn, like giving people access to the things that I know or that I have so we can all build together.
Yeah, you should be an open book of knowledge. This isn't you can listen, I can tell you something, or what is the people say? Can I something your brain, pick your brain?
Pick your brain.
Yeah, like, there's been times that I've been kind of upset about that where it's like, God, like, what are y'all talking about? Like, pick your brain, pick your brain, pick your brain. But there are some people who it's like, bro, you can Google this. And there's some people who have real questions and it makes sense, like, to really, like, that they really want to talk to you. But you should be an open book. Like, anything you know, you should just put it out there. You're not losing anything. You're not losing your secret sauce by putting it out there. If anything, you're gaining more trust. You're helping more people. And it almost kind of positions yourself more as a thought leader.
And how does it even help you to hold on to the knowledge that you have?
Like the point of impacting is to spread that.
Yep.
You uplift others as you ascend. And that seems kind of common sense, so I don't need to go into it much. But get your friends with you when you're doing projects, or pull up people or help them, be a resource. However you can, you reach into the people that you know who are qualified and can do whatever it is. Like as you're ascending, put people in position, period.
They view the journey as the goal. So it's realizing that end, like, might not ever actually happen, but every single day, showing up every single day in the best way that you can, like all of that, that is the part of the journey.
This one we mentioned earlier, they use their power and influence well. So for me, there's some people that I've seen who, they might have like a zillion followers or something, and like nothing they say matters. It's just like fluff, or it's just like, it's entertainment almost, instead of, it being able to be something that really like makes a change. But like we said before, you can choose to not engage in certain behaviors, or you can choose to have a particular stance in the way that you put out information.
And then they listen to those who they are trying to help or impact. And so instead of going in and saying, hey, this is your problem and this is how I can fix it. Like if you're working on impacting, it's like listening and allowing space for feedback. And then actually helping where there's a need or where there's a gap, not helping just where you think that there's a need or a gap.
So then, having like read all of these, how do you think that you measure up to these types of things?
I think I'm a work in progress, especially like I think I embrace critique pretty well, but it's like pushing my ego all the way to the side to hear those. Like, I think that's one I definitely can work on.
Do you receive a lot of critiques though?
I ask for them. Like whenever I work with people, like how can I be better? How can I do this? But I feel like I actually do pretty well. Like if you guys have been listening or if you haven't, like purpose is pretty much my number one focus in everything that I do. And so impact is something I think about every single day. And so I try to do all of these, but it's a journey.
One thing I noticed with you that I can't quite figure out, I feel like your whole work is specific about making change towards specific things or doing certain things. But anytime we talk about, well, how do you empower or what is your impact? It's why do you feel like you don't really know? Or maybe that you don't know, but like you can't define it when really I would think you could just say, well, my work is this. So it's helping people be mindful, doing this, you know?
It is. I think it's hard to, for me, it's hard to put into words because for me, it's like, well, I guess, and that's just like on my side, it's hard to put into words because I'm like, it's just this feeling that I know I'm doing the right thing and I know I'm making an impact when I'm there. But I help people work on their health. I help people learn how to be mindful and to mediate stress and giving them tools and things to work through learning how to love themselves and accompany them along their journey. Like I help teach and I spread all of the knowledge. So I can't put it in very, I guess, layman's terms like that.
I mean, I think that you can because I think that you can look at what you do daily and say, like, this is the way I'm impacting people now, whether there may be some grandiose thing that comes down later. So I feel like I start hearing that where it's like, well, you can say your whole, like, what's your services with your work and, you know, with what you do. I think that's the way you impact. I think, and I said that too because I feel like you kind of critiqued yourself with like where you are with these things. But I think I'm doing great with all these to be like when I look at them, I'm like, oh, okay. There's always, obviously, I'm not saying I'm perfect and you can be a lot better with these. But I don't think there's any of these that I look at and it's like, I don't do that.
Yeah,
so
same.
It's kind of a lifestyle. And it's, I think what I would want to get better at is just the ability to do more. And, again, that comes with continuing to better organize myself and like get myself more efficient and more effective so that I have the space to do that and for it to not be irresponsible to, you know, be taking days off to do this or that when I need to be making sure myself is straight as well.
Exactly. And I think that's probably the number one thing is making sure that I'm good. Like that my cup is full enough to do all these things that I'm doing.
And I think we down ourselves because we're like, shoot, like if I'm struggling with certain things, like you feel like you're not helping others, but sometimes you're the person you need to be focused on. So that's just life, I think. And having impact means that even when you're maybe reclusive or maybe when you're focused on yourself or you're going through something or whatever that is, you've impacted other people who are out here now, you know, doing all of those same things too. So you've already exponentially like had impact because meeting you has changed a lot of things that I'll try to do or the way that I might try to greet people or be a little bit more open or happy or whatever, the people you work with at the gym, et cetera. And so there's lots of many pieces of Carlie in the souls of other people. And so you take your time, do what you need to do, but you've had impact and you will continue to have more impact, I think.
Appreciate that.
This week, we want to have
She's not going to let me get sappy though.
Right. No, we're not talking
next.
Moving on.
This week's shout out. Well, you're going to do the shout outs. Let me introduce it.
Oh, okay.
This week's shout out is something super special that we're both very excited about. Lex, who's our shout out this week?
We want to shout out 1500 Sound Academy down in Inglewood. It's run by Lawrence and James Fauntleroy. It's an academy where they are teaching students about music production, the marketing, the business behind it. And they bring in a lot of cool guests because even both of them are, you know, Grammy winners and Grammy nominated and, you know, have so many connections. So why not use your resources, your connections, your knowledge, what they know in music and develop a place that looks incredible. It's awesome. And, you know, so it's not like third-rate resource type things. Like, it's a really nice facility, and they bring in, you know, Diddy. They bring in all these different, people who come in and actually talk to the kids and show them how they do things. We were at their facility the other day. It was really cool for an event. And so I just thought it was really cool to shout them out and share that because there's so many kids now. They're so talented with the videos they do, the music they do, you know, the posts you see them doing. So it's like, to really learn how to do that and maneuver in the business world or to do that for your work or, you know, to really hone in on your craft is really good. So we wanted to shout them out this week. And you can check the notes for a link to see their site.
And it's so interesting because we're talking about impact and they wouldn't even know it. Like I've heard about when I saw that the event was at 1500 Sound Academy, I was so excited.
So I was like, oh, okay.
It's like 16 exclamation points, which is like only half of more than what I usually use. But I was so hyped because I have friends who go there and who are students, and I've seen the access that they created. Like Lawrence and James, they saw a need in the community and decided to meet it with a first-rate facility with all of these amazing opportunities, and they're sharing their wealth and knowledge with other people. And I was so inspired because so we trying to do buy the block.
Yeah, so they're excited about the ownership of that, both that and the fact that, anybody who comes in through there, again, like they're getting a piece of that and then they're going out. And hopefully that's something that they remember that experience as they move on and do the same for others.
Yeah, so a big shout out. Look in the notes. And then the question of the week.
Question of the week is, who else can I root for other than myself?
Who else can you root for?
I can root for my friends that I see making an impact. I have a friend who wants to develop a whole community center and just realized, been talking about it for so long and trying to wait for the pieces to come together, relationships, et cetera. And he said it just clicked with him the other day, like, yo, I already know people doing a program at this one place. I could just start by getting a room and just start by building it yourself, and then let it speak for itself, let it continue to grow. He wants to do production and show the entertainment industry in almost in the same way as 1500 for music. So when I see people doing things like that, I'm excited. I'm like, well, let's start meeting and let's talk about things that we can do. Because they'll reach out to me, with wanting certain feedback, opinions, etc. Or my friends who are artists and DPs and, well, let's start an art gallery. Let's do this, let's do that. And so supporting the friends that I have who have so much talent and who also want to give back and want to create something for themselves, that's who I root for. And I root for them through action.
Yes. Oh, I love that. I have two. So one is I root for my friends who might be struggling. And so they might have these big dreams. They're considering this next step in their life and they're not sure which way to go because I'm there, I've been there and it's tough. But I am rooting for you because you can do this. And I wish you could see you the way that I see you. And that, just being there and being that resource for that person who might be struggling. Y'all at a bomb, y'all can do it. And then the other one is I root for people who are betting on themselves. So people who are taking action and they might not have the money, they might not have the thing, but they are working hard. They're working those 3 jobs and doing this and doing that to make their dreams come true. I root for y'all because it ain't easy.
And it's easier to support people that you see working and supporting themselves. A lot of times I'll see man, they wasn't in my corner when I was, until I got to this level. And it's some people, they could have been, they should have been. But sometimes it's yo, stop waiting for people. You need to do what you need to do. And yeah, people want to see that you're going to stick to it. People want to see that you're really working towards it before they also put their energy towards it. So don't think anybody owes you anything. Stay on your path. Focus on your work that you need to do. Make the relationships you need to make. A lot of times it's new ones than what you thought, or who you thought you were going to be with or work with. But we hope that you got something out of this, that it sparked something. Like Carlie said, just to see what other people have done can really give you these thoughts of, well, how can I help or what can I do? And I think it's cool to be inspired, but then what are you doing next?
Exactly.
So really, really think about how you can have impact, whether it's from the small things to the bigger things. And we'd love to hear from you how you are making impact or how you would like to. And acknowledge yourself as well, because like we said, sometimes you're doing the most and you're not even really acknowledging that. And maybe there is a lot of impact that you already are leaving. And I think it's good to acknowledge that within yourself.
Yeah, and thanks to Lex for pointing that out to me, because that is something that I struggle with.
Yeah,
I am going to get mushy.
It's there. It's just, you just need to pull it out and you just need to acknowledge it. And sometimes I used to do that too. I would write a list of cool things that's going on, things I'm working on, things that I'm doing, things that are going right, because we focus so much on, dang, what I need to do or what I'm struggling with, which of course we need to find solutions for as well.
Yeah.
But really seeing those good things makes a big difference.
So how can you make an impact? How are you making an impact? Screenshot at Carlie's Couch on Twitter and on Instagram. Let us know what's up.
Bye.
Bye, y'all.